So the property 2 corresponds to the simplification of T of T inverse. It is something like sine of sine inverse x. So you have a sine here, you have a sine inverse inside. So sine of sine inverse x is equal to x. Cos of cos inverse x is also equal to x. Tan of tan inverse x is also equal to x. Cot of cot inverse is x. Secant of secant inverse x is also x. Cosecant of cosecant inverse x is also x. That means if the trigonometric ratio is outside, inverse trigonometric ratio is inside, these two functions are getting cancelled. But only if x belongs to the domain of the corresponding inverse trigonometric function. That is, sine of sine inverse x is equal to x as long as x belongs to -1 to 1. Because only numbers between -1 and 1 can go inside sine inverse. For example, if I ask you to find sine of sine inverse of pi. If the question is sine of sine inverse pi. So if you write the answer as pi, you're going wrong. So this is not equal to pi. So the answer for this is undefined. Why is it undefined? Because pi as a number is 3.14 something. And sine inverse is only defined for numbers between -1 and +1. So sine inverse pi is not defined. So sine of something not defined is again not defined. Similarly, if I write tan of tan inverse pi, so this will be equal to pi. There's no doubt about it. Because tan of tan inverse x is equal to x works for all real numbers. Because the domain of tan inverse x is all real numbers. And cosecant and secant, this formula works for all real numbers except -1 to 1. So if the question is cosecant inverse of pi by 4, so this might be given to confuse you. So whenever you see cosecant of cosecant inverse, you tend to cancel this, tend to write this as pi by 4, which is again wrong. Why is this wrong? Because cosecant inverse is not defined for pi by 4. So this pi by 4 is somewhere in between -1 to 1. So cosecant inverse is undefined. So cosecant of something undefined is also undefined. So the answer for this is undefined. So all of these are equal to x, but all these are not identical functions. So you'll be given questions on identical functions. So you'll be asked to check whether sine of sine inverse x and tan of tan inverse x are identical or not. You'll be asked to check whether these two are equal functions or not. The answer is no. These two are not equal because the domains are not equal. The domain of this function is -1 to 1. The domain of this function is all real numbers. Next, if you're asked to draw the graphs of these functions, you're asked to draw the graph of y is equal to sine of sine inverse x. So how do you draw this? The trick is this function is defined only between -1 and +1. And the value of this function is equal to x. So the graph is corresponding to y is equal to x, which is a straight line. Y is equal to x. So it stops here. The graph of y is equal to sine of sine inverse x stops here. If you're asked to draw the graph of y is equal to tan of tan inverse x, how does the graph of this look like? So this is also equal to x, but this is valid for all real numbers. Means if you draw the graph, so you get y is equal to x, complete line y is equal to x. I hope you understand the difference between this graph and this graph. So this graph corresponds to sine of sine inverse and cos of cos inverse. This graph corresponds to tan of tan inverse and cot of cot inverse. And can you guess how to draw the graph of secant of secant inverse and cosecant of cosecant inverse? It's very easy. So if you take the graph, this is 1, this is minus 1. Now here the graph does not lie between minus 1 and plus 1. Again, this graph is same as y is equal to x, but except this line segment which corresponds to sine. So you get graph like this for y is equal to secant of secant inverse x or cosecant of cosecant inverse x. So I hope you understand what this property says. So if you have trigonometric ratio outside and inverse trigonometric ratio inside, the answer will either be equal to x or will be equal to undefined. You have one of these two answers. So it will be equal to x if this x belongs to the domain of the corresponding inverse trigonometric function. Undefined if x lies outside the domain. So I hope it is clear. Thank you.